My name's Kelsey, or KoalaLuna. I decided that I wanted to cosplay Majima from Yakuza 0, which is a game I only finished less than 2 weeks before submitting this video. While the game Yakuza 0 is about gangs and violence, and it did make me cry a bunch, you can play karaoke as a minigame, and it has some of the best cinematics in the game. I picked Majima's karaoke performance to cosplay because it helped me conquer a huge fear: sewing buttonholes. And I guess I also had to learn how to roller skate too. Every person that sews always says the same thing. The longest part of sewing is cutting out the pattern in the fabric, and the rest is just piecing it together. And that is so true unless you continuously sew it together incorrectly, and you have to take it apart and sew it together, hopefully correctly the second time, or the third. Or if your creative process isn't the least bit organized, and you constantly have to search through piles of fabric for what you need. I knew personally that the pants were going to be the easy part. Instead of buying a pattern, I made my own pattern by tracing a pair of pants I already own that fit the way I wanted the pants I was making to fit. The base to every pants pattern is just 4 fabric pieces, a front and back for each leg, and then connect the crotch seam. Piece of cake. When I finished, I put my skates on to see how they looked with the finished pants. This is how I found out the floor of my apartment isn't level. Not a piece of cake. I knew the bulk of my time was going to be spent on the blazer. I've never sewn anything with a lining before, or a collar, or even sleeves, I think. I would say that it was mostly smooth sailing, everything considered. The construction was more simple than I expected, and it came together relatively quickly. I only had to seam rip once or twice. The only thing about seam ripping, sometimes if you move too quickly or if you're not paying attention, you can shove the seam ripper right through your fabric. If you're lucky, like me, it'll be somewhere on the inside, and it's nothing a little interfacing can't fix. The biggest mistake I made with the blazer is my facing fabric, the one on the outside, had a little bit of stretch to it, but my lining did not. And by the time I sewed the lining to the inside of the blazer no longer fit. I was able to solve this with one of my favorite sewing techniques called shirring. It's done by sewing one regular thread and one elastic thread so it will scrunch up the fabric, giving my lining the stretch to match the rest of the fabric. The worst part is the elastic thread has to be wound by hand. And then I did the scariest thing. Or the second scariest thing? The third? I had to take the back piece of my lining and cut it right in half. Other than the anxiety of cutting your hard work in half, it turned out just fine, and everything fit afterwards, and I conquered my fear of buttonholes. Now that the bulk of the sewing was finished, I completely winged it with the cummerbund and the headband. I was lucky that they both turned out the way I wanted them to on the first try. After the stress of sewing, it was so relaxing to hand paint all the little stars, even if 60% of my apartment is covered in pink glitter. The last thing I had to do was to style the wig. I've been cutting my own hair since high school, so I've always been pretty confident in my wig styling abilities. I really tried to get good footage of this process, but I really underestimated the time it would take for the hairspray to dry. But I am really happy with how it turned out. And the only other thing I had to do was put everything together and film everything for the other video. It was all smooth sailing, except it was like 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and I was roller skating in my shiny silver suit. My best friend came along to help film, and even through the heat and the bus of like 50 high school students that happened to drive up, it was such a fun day.